They said the files would change everything, and they were right, just not in the way anyone expected.
Anybody could be on the list.
Anybody. That's the word she chose. Because when your name shows up 24 times in the Jeffrey Epstein files, you need the world to believe it means nothing.
Okay. I wasn't his girlfriend. I wasn't his friend.
You were too old for him.
I was not only too old, but if...
She's defensive. She's scrambling. And in that scramble, she said something that nobody on that panel was prepared for.
You know what I would have to do to get on the plane?
What would she have to do? And more importantly, who else was doing it? Because the moment Whoopi Goldberg opened her mouth to defend herself, she cracked open a door that leads straight to one of the most powerful women in the world. And that woman's name is not in the headline, but maybe it should be. Let's start from the beginning, because context matters here. When the Jeffrey Epstein files were released, the internet didn't just react, it erupted. Thousands of pages, hundreds of names, emails, flight logs, contact lists, private correspondence. Documents that had been buried, sealed, and quietly kept away from public view for years were suddenly sitting in front of anyone with a browser and a free afternoon. And within hours, one name started trending that nobody on daytime television was ready for: Whoopi Goldberg. Now, before we get into what Whoopi said, and trust me, what she said matters enormously, let's establish what was actually in those files, because this is where the story gets layered. According to the documents, Whoopi's name appears approximately 24 times across the Epstein files. 24. That's not a passing mention. That's not a journalist citing her name in a news article. That's a pattern of correspondence and contact that stretches across multiple entries. And the most damaging piece? An email from Whoopi Goldberg's agent sent directly to Jeffrey Epstein's camp, begging.
No, please, please, I'm begging you. Whoopi Goldberg needs your jet to go to Monaco.
That's not an exaggeration. The word used in the email itself is begging. Let that sink in. Her agent wrote the word begging in a formal request to one of the most notorious predators in modern American history. The trip? New York to Nice, France. The occasion? A charity event. The White Feather Foundation Ball, connected to Julian Lennon. A round trip across the Atlantic Ocean on a private Gulf Stream. By conservative estimates, a flight like that runs $50,000 minimum. And Epstein's response?
No thanks. You misspelled thanks.
He said no. Jeffrey Epstein, a man who used private jet access as a tool of power, manipulation, and leverage over some of the most influential people on Earth, looked at Whoopi Goldberg's request and passed. That detail alone would have been enough for a news cycle, but Whoopi didn't stay quiet. And that's where the real story begins. 2 weeks. That's how long The View stayed quiet after the files dropped. 2 weeks of silence while Whoopi's name circulated across every major platform, every commentary channel, every group chat in America. And then, finally, they addressed it on air. Now here's what you need to understand about how The View handled this moment. It wasn't organic. It wasn't a candid conversation. Watch the tape closely and you'll notice something. The responses are too clean. The deflections are too smooth. The jokes land exactly where jokes are supposed to land to diffuse tension.
If the story was about a bus,
but it's like, you know, so...
That joke was rehearsed. The bus line, implying Whoopi takes public transportation and wouldn't need a billionaire's jet, was scripted, tested, and deployed on cue. We know this because it appeared twice, word for word, in the same segment. That's not comedic spontaneity. That's message discipline. Someone wrote that line, someone approved it, and then they ran it like a play. But in between the scripted deflections, Whoopi said something unscripted, something that the lawyers probably didn't greenlight, something that, when you listen carefully, opens up an entirely different conversation. She said she wasn't the only one there.
You were on the island?
I was, apparently, I don't know. They said I was on the island. They said, I'm like, I don't go anywhere.
She's denying the island. Fine. But notice the framing. She doesn't say, nobody was on the island. She doesn't say, that island story is fabricated. She says she doesn't go anywhere. It's a personal denial, not a blanket denial. And in legal and rhetorical terms, that's a very specific kind of deflection. She attended events in those circles. The charity event alone, the one her agent was begging for jet access to, confirms her presence in the same social ecosystem where Epstein operated. And the website for the White Feather Foundation? It didn't just confirm the event, it boasted about it. Goldberg flew in, photos included, so she was there. Maybe not on the island, maybe not in the most damning locations, but she was in the world. She was adjacent. And when she finally spoke, really spoke, she did something that nobody expected. She pointed sideways. This is the part that the mainstream coverage missed entirely, because everyone was focused on the jet. Everyone was focused on the no thanks. Everyone was laughing at the optics of Jeffrey Epstein rejecting Whoopi Goldberg's request. She wasn't the only one in those circles. She attended parties, events, charity functions, the kind of gatherings that required the right name, the right invitation, and the right connections to even get through the door. And in those rooms, in those specific rooms, there were far more powerful people than Whoopi Goldberg. People who didn't just attend, people who organized, people who facilitated, people who had the kind of reach and reputation that made Epstein's operation look legitimate to everyone around it. Now let's talk about Oprah Winfrey, because while Whoopi's name was generating headlines, Oprah's connections to the Epstein universe were sitting right there in the documents. Quieter, less obvious, but arguably far more structural.
Now, Oprah is limited in the context of the files, but there is clear collusion between Oprah and Jeffrey Epstein.
Sarah Ferguson, the Duchess of York, a documented figure in the Epstein files, sent Epstein a direct email before appearing on Oprah's show. The email was explicit. She wanted Epstein to know she was going on Oprah. She wanted his advice on how to answer questions about him. She was essentially running her talking points through Epstein before sitting down with one of the most watched television hosts on the planet.
Sarah sent Epstein an email saying, I want to make sure you're aware I'm going on Oprah tomorrow. I just wanted to make sure that you are aware of this and seek your advice on how you want me to answer.
Read that again. She's asking Epstein how he wants her to answer Oprah's questions. That means the Oprah interview, which millions of people watched as a moment of accountability, was potentially shaped by Epstein himself behind the scenes. And Epstein responded. He wrote the answer he wanted Sarah to give, scripted it, sent it back. Jeffrey was unfairly characterized as a pedophile by the tabloid press. He paid his debt to society and has sought forgiveness. That answer came from Epstein. It landed in an Oprah Winfrey interview. And at no point in the filing, in the coverage, in the aftermath, did Oprah address that her interview with Sarah Ferguson may have been quietly coordinated by the very man she was supposed to be holding accountable. Now here's where we have to be precise, because this isn't about vilifying someone based on association alone. Joe Rogan said it clearly. That's fair. That's the right framework. But Rogan also said something else. He said the bigger issue is transparency. Why do the same powerful names keep appearing around one of the darkest scandals in modern history? Why does it feel like the truth is still incomplete? And when you apply that framework to Oprah specifically, the pattern becomes harder to dismiss as coincidence. Harvey Weinstein. For years, Oprah was publicly warm toward him. Red carpets, industry events, the kind of proximity that in retrospect raises uncomfortable questions about what was known and when. Singer Seal was direct about it.
When you have been part of the problem for decades, but suddenly they all think you are the solution.
R. Kelly, Diddy, Harvey Weinstein. And now the Epstein adjacency through the Sarah Ferguson email. Each one individually, explainable. Each one together, a pattern that serious people are no longer willing to ignore. And then there's the question of what Oprah's proximity actually did for these men. Because Epstein wasn't just collecting famous friends for the social thrill of it. According to the documents and testimony detailed in the files, Epstein was engaged in deliberate reputation laundering after his 2008 arrest. That's the mechanism. That's how it worked. You attach yourself to credibility. You use trust as a shield. And in that context, the Sarah Ferguson email isn't just a diplomatic awkwardness. It's a documented example of Epstein's network reaching directly into Oprah's platform and shaping the narrative from the inside. Whoopi knew she was adjacent, but Oprah's adjacency runs deeper, more documented, more structural, and far less discussed. Here's something worth sitting with. Dave Chappelle walked away from $50 million, and people called him crazy. At the time, Oprah's reaction to Chappelle's departure was to amplify the narrative that he was unstable, that he'd made a mistake, that he'd thrown something away he'd never get back. It fit the script perfectly, because when someone refuses the money and walks out of the system needs everyone else to believe that person is the problem. Now, people are looking back at that moment with completely different eyes, because Chappelle didn't just walk away from a contract. He walked away from an ecosystem. And Oprah, consciously or not, was part of the machinery that tried to make him look foolish for doing it. Meanwhile, Whoopi Goldberg sat on that View panel for 2 weeks, saying nothing. And when she finally spoke, scripted, lawyered up, bust jokes ready, she said something that couldn't be fully scripted away. She said she wasn't the only one in those rooms. She said the real attention should go elsewhere. She said there are people far more embedded in this story than she ever was. She didn't say Oprah's name out loud. She didn't have to.
But Trump is on the list 38,000 times.
Well, I'm getting dragged.
She's deflecting upward and sideways simultaneously, pointing at Trump with one hand, gesturing vaguely at other powerful figures with the other. But the documented record, the Sarah Ferguson email, the coordinated interview, the repeated appearance of Oprah's world alongside Epstein's network, keeps pulling the conversation back to the same place. Jeffrey Epstein was dead before he could talk, but according to FBI records included in the newly released documents, he was close, very close.
On July 29, 2019, his lawyers and the federal prosecutors in this case, in very general terms, discussed the possibility of a resolution of the case and the possibility of the defendant's cooperation.
He was going to name names. That's what cooperation means in a federal case of that magnitude. You don't offer cooperation to avoid discussing minor details. You offer cooperation when you have information about other people, significant people, people whose exposure would matter enough to reduce your own sentence. And then the cameras malfunctioned. The guards fell asleep, and Jeffrey Epstein was found dead in a maximum security federal facility with broken bones in his neck that medical examiners argued were more consistent with strangulation than with what was officially ruled.
He could have been working for the CIA. He could have been a guy who was on his own, but also working with them, right? Like a guy that they used, but they never fully endorsed.
Like an asset.
Yeah.
Well, if Epstein was an asset, a controlled node in a larger intelligence and power network, then the people around him weren't just socialites and celebrities who happened to cross paths with a bad guy. They were potentially part of a system designed to keep certain information moving, certain people protected, and certain truths permanently out of reach. Whoopi Goldberg panicked when her name came up because she understood, at least partially, what proximity to that system implies. And in her panic, she gestured towards something bigger than herself, something she was adjacent to, but not central to. A world she attended but didn't architect. A world that Oprah Winfrey helped make look normal. Whoopi's agent begged for a jet. Epstein said no. Whoopi's name appeared 24 times. She went on television with scripted jokes and a lawyer's note and tried to make it go away. And in doing so, she accidentally confirmed what a lot of people already suspected, that she wasn't operating alone in these circles, that there were people above her in that ecosystem, people with more access, more influence, and more to lose. The Sarah Ferguson email is real. The Oprah interview coordination is documented. The pattern of powerful names appearing repeatedly alongside Epstein's network and then being quietly shielded from the same scrutiny applied to others is a documented, verifiable phenomenon.
We're told to trust the headlines, trust the official conclusions, trust that justice was served. But if that were true, why does this story still feel unfinished?
Why does it still feel unfinished? Because the files keep pointing at rooms full of powerful people. And the most powerful people in those rooms have the most sophisticated tools for making sure their names stay out of the headline. Whoopi Goldberg's name is in the headline, and she's furious about it. But listen carefully to what she said when she was furious. Listen to where she pointed. Listen to what she implied about who else was there, who else attended, who else moved through those spaces with far more comfort and far more cover than she ever had. The monster, she says, is hiding, and the hiding place. If you follow the documents, follow the emails, follow the coordinated interviews and the reputation laundering and the human shields, looks a lot like the most trusted brand in American media. That's not a conclusion, that's a question. And it's one that nobody on daytime television is going to ask themselves, but we just did.